Hello, and welcome to another episode of Acceptable Madness. My name is Scott McKinney, and today I actually have a third guest, and his name is Danny, and he's someone that I went to high school with. And recently, I actually didn't know this until we were playing Xbox very recently, and I mentioned our friend Trevor, who was on the podcast a few weeks ago, and that he was on, but Danny has a little bit of an experience with different prescription drugs that are used for depression and anxiety. So I'll let him start off by just introducing himself, and then we'll dive into it.
Hey, so my name's Danny. I went, like Scott just said, went to high school with him, which is quick story, which is funny because actually in high school I think we knew of each other, but we didn't really talk a whole lot because we had different friend groups at the time. And then through mutual obligations, we literally reconnected over Xbox, which is hilarious. And now I'd say we're pretty good friends. But so I guess just to dive right into it, and just to be blunt, honest with who's ever listening, to get right to the point, I was on two types of drugs. Currently, am on one. I'm on Lexapro right now, which for people who don't know, that is an anxiety drug. What it does is it kind of messes with the chemicals in your brain to slow, not just to make you not as anxious and nervous. There has been cases where it just makes you not care, but most of it is just to calm you down. And on the flip side, when I was 13, 14, 15, when I would say I was depressed, I was on, I forget the name. All I know is that it was a blue pill, and it was supposed to not make you happy, but do something to make you feel more quote unquote alive. So that is my, I guess, short story right there.
Well, believe it or not, Danny, I don't know if you know this, but there's actually a blue pill out there that makes a lot of older men feel happy too, but I don't think that would have been the same one.
It'd be really funny to a 13-year-old who is probably already hyperactive in that as well. So
Yeah. So because you haven't been on the antidepressant for a while, we'll focus more on the anti-anxiety medicine that you had. But I guess the first question that I have, which is, I guess the beginning of where taking that medication would have started too, is what made you feel like you needed to take some sort of medicine for anxiety? Like, what was the defining factor?
so before you could dwell into that, you need to, not you, but whoever needs to realize that anxiety is technically very common. I'm pretty sure everyone's experienced anxiety in your life. So there's between having anxiety and having an anxiety disorder. So anxiety disorders can develop from a complex set of risk factors that can range from genetics to brain chemistry to personality to life events, or just having a rough day and you're super nervous, which is anxiety, which every human gets at some point. I hope, unless you're insane. But so for me, I had an anxiety disorder to the point where I had to use certain breathing techniques. But literally, I kid you not, the stuff that you'd see in the freaking movies is what I would use. So like deep breaths, count to 5. It's not that big of a deal. Or I would get so nervous that I couldn't eat, or I'd get so nervous that I'd have to go and puke really quickly. It even came to a point, there was a very, very short span of my life, like we're talking like a month, where I would actually take a shot of Jack just to try and calm myself down.
Huh.
So for me, it's, I guess, start off like I was saying, there needs to be known right off the bat, just to lay it on the table. There's a difference between having anxiety and having an anxiety disorder. So
Right. Yeah, I didn't realize it got to a point of like vomiting, because that's pretty severe. Like I know people, and I mean myself included, have had anxiety attacks and whatnot, especially for like really monumental decisions, or whatever else could cause that. That's something I have no experiences with. I've never gotten to a point where I've been so anxious or had such an attack that I threw up, and that's just wild to me.
yeah, it's crazy to think about too. And when I think about it myself, it's funny because all of my major attacks happened because I was nervous about talking to someone or meeting someone. So whether it was it all, what the funny part, I'll be blatantly honest, it all came around when it was like usually girl stuff.
Yeah.
Whether did she like me, did she not, whatever. Like during my job interviews, I was totally fine. I mean, for God's sakes, my job now, I talk with probably 100 new people a day. and it's so easy. I can talk to anyone doing anything, but the minute it gets personal is whenever it gets hard. And
Yeah.
when you're there in the moment and you start talking to them, it's all fine. It's just the build up to it. I start shaking. I can't think straight. I start breathing heavily, and then I just need to go throw up.
Yeah.
Uh, and so that was back when I was like 18, still 18, back when you should be over that kind of stuff. So it was definitely crippling to an extent.
Right. That's like when
Um,
you feel like everything should be kind of straightening itself out,
yep.
and you feel like that kind of stuff should end, and then it just doesn't.
Yeah. And it
Like,
was weird. It was weird
go
too
ahead.
because in high school I had I mean, like I said, I don't know. I think we knew of each other. Like I wouldn't say popular, but I hung out with like a solid group of kids. I like never really had any major drama surrounding me. I had a
Right.
what I thought, I mean, at the time, I mean, nowadays I don't talk to any of them, but what I thought were good friends. Like I had a good high school, quote unquote career, but yeah, it almost like whenever I hit 18, everything just kind of regressed. I felt like I was 13 again, and like the whole world was caving in on itself. It was crazy, crazy
Yeah.
time.
Well, I mean, even to this day, like, so for example, I can do something like host a podcast, or I personally love public speaking. I think it's fun, and connecting with an audience is a great time. And I have a way easier time doing that because it's talking to people or communicating an idea or something. But having that intimate conversation with someone, like really either putting yourself out there for something like a girl that you're interested in, or really just kind of opening up, that's like the same kind of stuff that I understand and struggle with as well a lot of the time. Simply with age, that's kind of worked itself out a little bit. But it's still something that causes a lot of anxiety. I tried to be in sales for a little while, and believe it or not, that wasn't great because of that reason
Nah,
of
it didn't work out for you, huh?
no, it wasn't perfect. But well, then, so going back to that, to the first question that I asked, and diving into the actual usage of these drugs, what what did it for you? Was it like, was there this internal thought where it's like, shit, I just threw up, and like this is a problem, I should go see a doctor? Or was it just the building up of so many other things? Was it like one defining moment, or is it just did your like parents tell you, "Hey, Danny, maybe we should go talk to someone about this"?
Yeah, so how it started, so I've always grew up, and this sounds like, oh, I'm a macho man. I'm not, I'm stupid. But I always like I can figure things out myself. I can do it myself, which is why I was a big fan of breathing techniques and like just going to a quiet place for like 30, not even 30 seconds, like literally 5 seconds, and just be like slap myself in the face like, you got this, let's go.
Yeah.
Um, so I would say, I guess when it comes down to it, there's an actual, it's called GAD, generalized anxiety disorder. That's what I feel like I had for the longest time. Which, there's like 43% of people have that. If someone wants to fact check me on that, I may be wrong, but that's just what I looked up before the podcast. But it's like
I'm sure it's close
43%
enough.
of Americans have that. And, that's not the big issue. The big issue was when I hit PD, which is panic disorder. That's the stuff that like it's only like 2.7% of Americans have it. That's when it starts affecting you. That's when you start having like, okay, this is actually hurting my body because I'm not eating right and I'm starting to throw up because I'm like so nervous. That started, excuse me. That started around like the first case of that was around 17, which is strange because I thought this whole time all my breathing techniques and me working through it, I thought I was beating it myself. And then out of nowhere, I don't know the cataclysm that started it. It just got worse. I started having these attacks where I was starting to throw up, and then I was starting having stomach problems. And that's when my mom like came to me and she was like, "Yeah, no, like enough's enough. We're gonna go see someone to get some help." And
Yeah.
that's when it happened earlier. There was 17, which it was not to make a long story longer, but it was strange because literally I was doing good. So like I was struggling with anxiety around 14, and then 14, 15, 16, I figured out my own techniques. I knew what to do to calm myself down. You could literally do the scariest thing in the world to me, and I'd be able to calm myself down literally in an instant. I was good at it. I figured myself out. Then something, I still to this day don't know what, something happened at 17 where it just turned for the worse. Suddenly I started having these things where I was, getting physically ill. Not like I'm sick, but like I need to go puke. And
Yeah.
that was that was a ball out of left field, dude. I mean, I didn't know how to handle that at all. So
I feel like I'd love to know like the brain chemistry that happens or like what causes it, because I mean it's going to be different for everybody, but for me the one of the big things that happened was it was 8th grade for me, so I don't know how old I would have been, maybe 13 or 14 or something. That was like the first account that I ever had with a suicidal thought, and I
hmm
don't know where it came from, but like 12-year-old me never would have expected myself to think about literally killing myself. And then, like, a couple years later, all of a sudden it comes out of nowhere. And then that's just your brain now. And it's scary. Like, the fact that it just
yeah,
comes out of nowhere and it's these really negative things. Like, for me, suicidal thoughts. And for you, this, like, rampant anxiety that. And the fact that you're, still taking medication for it, like, it's still clearly something that
there's
you deal with every day.
there's almost to a point, and if there's anyone listening that has anxiety, find a way to leave a comment. I know this isn't YouTube, but find a way to leave a comment because I'd like to know through Scott. But it's almost in a way you wonder if you're on medication and then you get off it, if you're going to be okay. Like anxiety is like a an illness that is cured. You wonder if you're all right. You wonder if these drugs you're taking, and it almost has just a placebo effect.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of wondering that right now. I'm not testing it, but I
Yeah.
am just wondering it right now. Where are these drugs? Because I know I'm fine now, but like, are these drugs even doing anything? Is this all just a big placebo effect? Is my anxiety gone? I don't know. So
Right.
it's interesting. So if anyone else has anxiety that listens to this, let me know what you think too, because that's actually something I want to know more about. So
Yeah, and stuff like that's really hard to figure out because it's like impossible to figure out. Well, I've been taking these for just a random number like 5 years and I've been feeling better, but is the main thing behind it, is that taken care of? Like, did that kind of get helped behind the
mm,
sidelines? Am I dealing with it better, or is it really just under wraps because I'm taking this medication? And it's something that's like it'd be interesting to find out, but it's also
it's scary.
it, you don't want to risk it because
Yeah.
like if it is bad, then finding out that it's still bad without the drug could be very defeating.
What needs to be understood too is there's so much that goes into either GAD or generalized anxiety disorder or whatever. It's not just okay, I'm scared to do things. Like these drugs, if you go off them and you have really bad anxiety, it's not just okay, I'm going back to fearing people. Your life may be so much better because of the drug and you don't know it. Because you're going out more, maybe you have a better job. Maybe you have a relationship that you're really proud of. Maybe you bought a new dog. I don't know, so maybe there's just a lot of things that like are going well in your life. And so you feel if you go off these drugs, are you going to back to almost a tribalist self that you were before? I don't like
Yeah.
what's going to happen. So,
Did you, whenever you were initially told that prescriptions would help, what did you have any apprehensions? Because I know one thing that I've had with antidepressants or other medication is the fear that like, well, if I take this medicine, then is it really me?
yeah.
And or like those internal thoughts. Like, how did you feel?
So when I was 16 and I just got over depression because I took the blue pill, I don't know what it's called. I'm sorry, but I when I took the blue pill, I only took it for about 5 months, which is not a long time. And I felt good. And so whenever I was open to the idea of, hey, this anxiety pill will, I guess, for lack of a better term, fix your problem. I was like, hell yeah, like my depression's gone. So if we can get rid of this anxiety too, then let's go. Hook me up. It's injected in me if that's what you have to do.
Yeah.
Um, I took it for a few months. Whenever I was fit, it was either 15 or 16. Sorry if I'm getting my day screwed up here, but it was either 15 or 16. I took it a few times, and it did change me. I whenever I was 15, 16, I felt like I had a lot more energy. And then whenever I took these anxiety pills, I didn't care. I get to put it into a big perspective. I did not care about anything. I mean, I still, of course, did well in school. I graduated like a 3.5. And I still did my sports and hung out with friends, but the lack was just so much there. Now it was, oh man, I really got to study this test, or oh, we got this big king game coming up too. Wow, yeah, okay, test is coming up. Guess I should maybe try to cram. To,
Yeah.
we got another game coming up. No big deal.
Now, when you say you don't care, it's not that you lost all drive and motivation. It's just that it didn't make you as anxious, right?
Yes, that's
Okay.
a perfect way of saying. So I did not lose my motivation or drive, as you say, to be a better person, to do well, but it was the fear of, not that even the fear of, because I still feared failure. Um, but I guess like you said, it just went down.
Yeah. Well, I know because one of the things that I've always thought is like if I take an antidepressant and I have less suicidal thoughts, will that cause complacency to set in? Because for me, and maybe it's not a healthy way to think about it, it's just how I do it. But like I use those thoughts as kind of a driving factor where I'm not super happy in the position and situation I'm in right now. What can I do to better myself? So that's something that I've always had a fear of is like if I were to give them a shot, would I just slack off or like become lazy? And that's something I really don't want to do.
There's a theory going on actually with that, and I can't believe I'm bringing up YouTube. I sound like such a freaking millennial.
Dude,
But
so many people use it. It makes
it's
sense as a source at this point.
it's ridiculous. But so there's it's a couple of either people that run podcast shows, people that run let's plays, people that do what are those things called where they like just document their lives? I'm having a brain freeze right now.
Vloggers.
Vloggers, thank you. Vloggers, there's a thing, Cohen's, whenever they become famous, of course they love, like, not, or I guess as famous as it can be on YouTube, they like being famous, they love all the money that comes with it, but there's some of them that have admitted, one in particular I'll use is actually Aaron Hansen from Game Grumps. I don't know if you've
Yeah, I know the name at least.
yeah. So I don't watch Game Grumps a whole lot, but I did see this and it was very interesting because I know other YouTubers that have liked it. But he was saying one day where he's like, there's some days I miss being an animator back when I had to like make cartoons for a living. Like, and not just like it was my job, but like I need to pump out this cartoon by Friday or else I'm not going to eat the next day.
Yeah.
Because that gave him the drive to do better and to like truly make stuff that he thought was really good compared to now where he's like living a very, very cushiony life, still doing a lot of good, still pumping out more content, but nothing like it used to be. So
Yeah.
that drive factor almost like disappears because it's not like I need to do this. It's we're doing okay right now, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I wonder if that affects people like you too. I don't know.
Yeah, and
So.
I mean, I'm not at a point of luxury or success where I fear that. So that's
True.
something where I'll get back to you on that if that happens.
Yeah, give me 4 years. You'll be fine. I'll see you.
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
You'll be the next J.K. Rowling, telling people who they are and what they identify as.
Yeah, as long as I don't just start like changing my characters and the stuff that I write, then I'm good. But
Dumbledore was gay.
Sticking to just YouTubers, like I know Boogie2988, H3H3,
Yep.
those are two big ones that like they've come out and just been like, look, there are times where I need to step away from what I'm doing and just focus on me and my mental health and all of that. And I think personally, I think it's great whenever someone that is an influencer and kind of has a following behind them when they do kind of openly address something like that.
Yeah.
Because if you don't address it and you just let it sit there and kind of eat you up inside, but you still feel like you have this obligation to, pander to your fans and everything, then you're asking for disaster.
I agree.
And like I put something on Instagram today that I just thought was funny, and it was me saying, if you bottle up your emotions until you explode, that's the equivalent of holding in your poop until you shit yourself. And I stand by it because it's just like you really need to be open about stuff like that or else it's just going to lead to disaster farther down the line.
True. I agree with that.
So taking antidepressants, taking anti-anxiety pills, how much did a positive, like healthy mindset go into it to actually having the pills work? Did you have to like adjust and be super optimistic and wait for them to kick in? Or did you take them not knowing if they were going to work and you went into them with a bit more pessimism?
So I like to call myself a fake cynic. I'm a closet optimist, I guess, where I will always say the worst that's going to happen just to prepare myself mentally when deep down I'm like, no, things will work out. I believe that. But I will always say to myself, and I'll beat it into myself like, it's going to suck. Life sucks. just get used to it. So I was going into it beating into myself like these things are gonna suck, but just it's gonna help you on the long run. Take your time and it'll be great. And actually, and I know people always have horror stories, but for me, it ended up being really great. I'm very happy. I'm not saying this drug is for everyone. I'm not saying Lexapro is for everyone. There are other people that
Right.
need different. I mean, everyone's brain chemistry is different. But for me personally, this was, I mean, a lifesaver. Not a lifesaver. I don't know if I would have committed suicide over anxiety. I did, but this was me not losing weight. This was me not being scared of just waking up in the morning.
Yeah. It kind of
So
just gave you your life back.
yeah,
Like it takes that weight off your shoulders in a way that nothing else had at that point.
yep, I would agree. So
And well, that's why I think it's cool to think about. For me, I think you mentioned you're a closet optimist, which I think is a good way to put it. I'm in the same boat where, for me, I every single time any situation happens, I plan for the worst.
yep,
Because then
always.
if something even slightly better than the worst happens, you're
It's a positive.
pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, it's the greatest thing ever.
Yeah, like I'm coming off of being laid off, and now I have a job that's at least paying me something while I can get back on my feet, and I'm still in a better position than if I were to have just lost all of my savings and become homeless. So like, there's not too much for me to be upset about at this point. But I feel like if I'm just sitting there expecting to just lose all my money and in my possessions and just like be on the streets or having to move back in with my parents, which those are not comparable things by any means because my parents are great, but like having to kind of restart, I don't know, it's just like knowing that that's a possibility can be a really good thing with optimism, to just know like, well, if that's the worst case scenario, then I can just keep pushing forward and do whatever works and figure out what I need to do to kind of get farther and in a more happy and positive direction.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's I mean, frankly, I couldn't have put it any better myself. You hit the nail on the head. So
Perfect. Did you so you mentioned that your mom, right? She was one of the ones, or she was the one who mentioned to you like, hey, maybe this is something worth getting checked out. Did you have a hard time talking to your family about your anxiety?
no.
And like, if you did or if you didn't, how do you feel about it, or how were your conversations with your family after you kind of told them about it?
So I'm very open with my family when it comes to me and any health issues or any basically any issues that aren't girls. I was very open with whenever I was young. Now my parents know the full story of any relationships I have. But back then I was like, "No, I'm a hardcore teen, I'm edgy, and this is my life," kind of thing. So
Oh, the good old days.
oh yeah. Listen to Blink 182 thinking I'm a hard ass. Yeah, it was great, dude. But anyway, so no, I told them kind of right away what was going on. My mom, so my dad loves me to death, but my dad was also doing like 8 other different things, and he's just my dad, just to throw it out there because I love saying this. My dad used to be ex Special Forces, used to be a Green Beret. So he was a Green Beret for I don't know, I think like 12 years.
That's awesome.
Now he just loves to do nothing but chill on the couch and watch Hallmark movies. So
That's quite the shift.
yeah, right. So I mean, that's not saying that my dad's one of the best people I ever met, but when it comes to different things, my dad was there for the usual dad stuff, while the mom, and I don't like to use generalize because I know every parent's different, but the mom is usually a little more focused in on your life, while the dad is like for the broad surroundings for the life
Yeah.
kind of deal. And so my mom was kind of more focused on what was going on with me and being like, "Yo, you're off today. What's up?" And got me to be open up. My dad's like, "Hey, you good?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fine." He's like, "You sure?" I'm like, "Yeah." Okay, good. So
Yeah.
so my mom was the one to really like, and I of course told her it right away, but yeah, I mean, straight up, I was just, "Mom, I think I got an issue." And she was like, "What's going on?" And I'm like, "I've been throwing up recently." She's like, "Oh, good. Are you sick?" And no, I'm not sick. I just like get nervous. And it wasn't any problem like with my mom. The issue came about whenever I was talking to the doctor. That's when I had the issue. Um,
Yeah.
because what's the worst thing a man has? It's pride. And so whenever I'm talking to my family, who cares? They're my family. I can tell them anything. But when you're talking to strangers, even if they are a doctor and they're qualified, I was a very prideful young kid. Which, let me just throw out there right now for anyone who's listening: pride to an extent is good. Anything past a certain point, you're an idiot. So just be very careful when it comes to pride.
Yeah.
And so
There's got to be a point where you need to feel comfortable asking for help or really
yes.
putting yourself out there to search for it, because no one can do everything that's expected of them.
No, you can't. It's the old saying, you can't teach a fish to climb a tree. It's impossible. Like, there's some things people can't do, and there's some things that people just need help with. I know there are people out there that just refuse to accept help, but you are going to need it in life. No one can ever, the most powerful people that have ever walked on this planet has never made it alone. Hell, as powerful, whatever your religious views are, Jesus was a historical figure, and no matter how powerful you think he was, whether religious or not, he did not do everything he did alone. So no one on this earth can do anything alone. Just fun little tidbit for all you. Anyways, point being, so I was at the doctor, and I didn't want to tell the doctor all my symptoms because I was very prideful. It was to the point my mom had to be like, "Listen, do you want to keep throwing up and looking like a fool?" And I'm like, "No." So then I talked to the doctor and things got better there. But it was really hard talking to other people outside of my family. That
Yeah.
was, and for the next few years, I didn't tell the girl I was dating with at the time. I didn't tell her I had anxiety. What does that look like? I'm like that because I'm a lesser man, because I'm freaking nervous and I shake and I puke, you know?
Yeah.
So,
It's just all those like apprehensions. I mean, it took me until I was 21 or 2 to feel comfortable telling my parents about it. Like, I was open with my parents and I told them a lot of the problems that I had, but I never explicitly was like, yeah, I think about killing myself sometimes. Because and this is something I said when Trevor was on here, actually, was that something that, like, every parent wants to help their kids, but that no parent wants to know that their kids are in pain. And it's not because they don't care, it's because they want the best for them.
yeah.
So, like, so that's always been something that, as of recent, I've had a lot easier a time expressing myself and, like, talking to my family and whatnot. But I went to see a personal counselor, a therapist, while I was in college, and after 10s, 20 sessions, I don't know how many, I could never get into the deep conversation. I could never talk about what was actually on my mind, which is crazy because I know that everybody has their own struggles and who they can depend on and stuff. But I would have figured that I'd have an easier time telling a complete stranger that that they talk to people about similar thoughts all the time. I figured I'd have a way easier time talking to them about it than my family. And for me, it's just the complete opposite. Like, not to say anything negative about therapy, because I know how many people it works for. It just was something that worked a lot more for others. And for me, I've confided a lot more in friends and family and relationships and all that. And it's crazy the world of difference that actually makes.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah,
just, it's absolutely wild.
it's unbelievable the change that happens, and it's again different for everyone, but it's true. What you're saying is just downright true.
Yeah. Is there anything that would ever cause you to stop taking the medication permanently?
Which one? Either? Both?
I guess because you said you're off the antidepressant, so Lexapro. Is there anything that would make you stop taking it, where you'd feel comfortable doing that and not having to incorporate that into, like, daily use?
So the only thing that would make me stop using it, and this is way off topic, so we'll try not to delve too much into it, is if the pharmaceutical companies start screwing me over. And I'm not Mr. Oh, the man's out to get me, but I mean, dude, seriously, next to the guy like the president of Nestle, screw the pharmaceutical companies. They're evil, plain and simple.
I mean, I can't fault you for having that opinion just based on EpiPens and Martin Shkreli or Pharma Bro,
So,
or you bring up any of those people, like, or any of those different
oh
things,
man,
it's
man.
easy to see Pharma screwing people over. So I get that.
Oh, so that'd be so just to keep things in the same realm, so we don't dwell off too far. As long as the pharmaceutical companies don't just out of nowhere be like, "Hey, we're gonna jack it up to another. You want to refill your pill bottle for 60 days? Cool. How about another $700?" Like what? What? So hard pass. But that'd be the only reasons I would stop for that reason.
Yeah.
Other than that, I would like to keep it going as long as I can or as long as I feel it's necessary. You never want to be on a drug too long because then like it's called a drug. So you could become self-reliant on it and you don't want that for anything. Unless you absolutely need it, you know?
Yeah,
So
like
for instance,
I'm not gonna stop taking my Advair or my asthma medication.
yeah, so
But
that doesn't make a lot of sense. Like
yeah.
but for someone like me, so Lexapro is to make sure until because your body changes all the time, even till death, it changes. So maybe in 10 years, I will be totally fine, or maybe 10 years I'll be worse, or 10 years we'll be dead. I don't know. So it really just
Let's hope
depends.
not dead.
Yeah. So it really just depends on what's going on and if I feel I'm ready to get off it. Do I want to be off it? Is that the goal? Frankly, I don't think there is a goal. The goal is just to not have anxiety. And whether I get that through the pill or through not, then so be it. But the goal at the end of the day is not so much the pill. The pill is just a means to an end. The end is
Yeah.
not having anxiety.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's actually a really important distinction to make because I know that for me, and it's actually something I hope to do an episode on later, but so I'll talk more in depression because that's more of what I am affiliated with. But I think that a really healthy view of depression is just kind of trying to figure it out day to day and trying to figure out how to be your happiest self at really any given moment. And I think that a lot of people, whether they're taking the antidepressants or they're taking or they're doing different things in their life to try to make themselves less depressed or feel better, whether it's like working out or maintaining a healthier diet or sleep schedule or blah blah blah, any of that stuff, seeing an end to depression is just, it's something that's probably never going to happen. So it's more of
Constant
finding
battle.
stuff to huh
It's a constant battle.
yeah, always. And it sucks because it's like I'm 23. Let's say I live to 80 years old. That means I have 57 more years of living with depression. And when you put it like that, when you
That's
know how
very
hard
damning.
the day-to-day can be,
Yeah.
that's a son of a bitch.
That-
Like, that is really hard.
That's something I would give. So I like I said at the beginning of the podcast, I struggled with depression. I was but my depression I think was more linked towards anxiety because
Yeah.
I was terrified of death when I was 13 because I guess I was just fully grasping it or something. I don't know. I just played Gears of War, but I was fully grasping the concept of death and how like we're not going to be here, and so I went from being terrified of it to being like, well, what's the point? Like almost a nihilist. Like if what's the point? Like if we're all gonna die, why am I even here wasting my time just to suffer?
Right.
Like a freaking edgy teenager that I was, I guess. But that's truly what I thought though, not to downplay it, but that is what I thought at the time. And so the antidepressants helped me get over that. It was a struggle for about, I would say, a year where I was like, what's the point? Who cares? We're all going to die anyways. Why not just like, why keep going on with this pain, you know?
Yeah.
Why do it? Now I have a different mindset because I was able to, and I will say, so I know depression is hard to beat. And so I feel awful saying that I beat depression. So I don't mean any disrespect to anyone out there. I'm not saying I'm better.
I'm sure nobody's feeling
Yeah.
that way. You're okay.
But whenever I beat depression now, it's almost like I flip the script. Yes, we're all gonna die. But make the most of what you can. I refuse to say YOLO, but make the most of
Thank
what
God.
you can with the time you have. And I've now become a firm believer. If it's your time, it's your time. You know. And I know that's a horrible thing to say to someone who's constantly battling depression whatsoever, and I feel awful if I'm hurting anyone's feelings or being insensitive. I'm super sorry. But what I went through, just my personal experience after facing death and facing depression, and for a hot minute, about I would say a couple weeks, being like, "What's wrong with suicide? What's the worst that could happen? I die. So what?" Now I'm like, if it's my time, it's my time. But like, I'm certainly not asking for it.
Yeah. And just to clarify, I know you're not saying it's your time, so let's kill myself. It's definitely more of like natural causes.
Yes.
I definitely don't want to get that
Yeah,
impression.
let me thank you for clarifying that. So what I'm saying is to everyone out there is, if the Grim Reaper comes knocking at your doorstep with a scythe, doing a black trench coat, unless it's Halloween, you got to answer that call.
Yeah, I mean, because suicide is never the answer, but at the same time, I feel like there's definitely a transition between being younger and not having a care in the world and feeling like you're invincible all the time, to realizing how easy it is to just stop existing, to really
Yep.
to see how kind of fragile life is. So I have a terrible fear of the ocean. So what I like to do to torment myself at night is watch videos of things happening in the ocean. And I watched something recently where it was about differential pressure underwater. And I won't get into the science of it, but that's basically...
do a video on the Titanic.
Yeah, okay, we don't need to talk about that. Okay. I have a video coming out next week that's a conspiracy about the Titanic, but that'll come out eventually. But,
all right.
Differential pressure is basically different pressure between two sources that are connected. So what happens is, if you have water in one cup and water in another, and they're connected, and the pressure is unequal within those cups, the water will force itself to kind of to even itself out. It's just distributing itself equally. I saw a video of a crab walking on an underwater pipe that had differential pressure, and the pipe was trying to equal the pressure of the ocean, and so it just sucked the crab in and immediately died. Like, it was instant, just eradicated immediately. Now I look at that and I think, wow, that's how quick you could die.
Oh yeah,
that's it. But at the same time, it also kind of brings, for me, this comfortable appreciation for everything that I do have going on, because everything is so uncertain that, like, the consequences for everything seem, I don't want to say unimportant, but like it makes it easier for me to realize that everything can work out, even though that's coming from kind of a darker place, because like I know that everything's gonna be fine, and that like even if I'm having these negative thoughts now or something, that just kind of pushing forward and really trying to make the best of whatever situation I'm going through I'll come out on the other side, unlike that crab, and be in a much more comfortable position.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to say that, because I know you weren't implying suicide is just your time, but I wanted to make sure that I address that, because I know that it's just something that it can be quite unfortunate, those thoughts, and that suicide's never the answer. But at the same time, like, understanding that life isn't just the fact that it doesn't make you indestructible can also really have a good effect on mindset, to realize, like you were saying, that it'll happen when it happens, so just enjoy the ride while you're there.
Yeah. So to kind of bounce off your point, keep in mind, so I just did a quick Google search every month ago. It's at the CDC, Center for Disease Control Prevention, so it's hopefully a credible source. And I just looked up the number of deaths for leading cause in the U.S. for 2017. And if you take out all the medical stuff, because the leader is heart disease, shocker.
Yeah.
Number 3, it goes heart disease, cancer, and then number 3 is accidents. So that could fall in the range of car crashes, I don't know, falling off a bridge, the Titanic, whatever. So that could just be what it is. And then all the way at the bottom of the 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, 9, the 10th list, so number 10 is actually suicide, sitting at 44K. While accidents
is that the entire U.S.?
Yeah, the entire
in
U.S.
2017. Okay.
So that is, I mean, so 44 in the grand in how big the US is, that might not seem like a lot, but that's 44 people, almost 45 who think, "Yep, this is what I got to do." That's awful. So yes, so Joe, going off of how life could instantly, okay, yeah, it can, dude. I could walk out of my house tomorrow and get hit by a meteor. Like, I don't know. So you can't think like that because you'll go insane trying to prevent like things that can't happen. Like, I can't control the dude in front of me if he decides to brake check me and I fly out the window. But you can control or try your best to control suicide. That's why I think suicide is so much more, I wouldn't say dangerous, but so much more almost in a state of constant hell than accidents, because accidents happen. I mean,
Yeah.
not to sound weird
Well,
or whatever.
I was driving down 79, which is the road near us, and the speed limit is 70 miles per hour. So I was going 70, 75 miles per hour. I was going from my parents' house to where I live, and a turkey flew into the intersection and bounced off my windshield on the driver's side, and the windshield exploded.
Oh
now,
my God.
the windshield was intact enough where the turkey did not come through, and so all that happened to me, I actually didn't have any damage to me or my car besides the windshield, which was really good. I had to change the windshield wipers and the windshield itself, and no one else was in the car, so no one was hurt. And I wear glasses, so any of the glass that shattered off the windshield did not go in my eye. And it didn't even occur to me until like a week later, where I just sat down and I was like, holy shit, I could have died.
Yeah,
I was
right?
like, if that turkey, I'm going 75 miles per hour. If that thing bursts through my windshield and hits me in the face, like, I'm done.
Yeah.
And it's just, you look at something like that and you're like, that's how quick it could happen. And then you just look at the world around you and you're just like, I gotta call my mom and tell her I love her.
You know, it's the
Like,
it's the funny thing. So my near-death experience happened when I was 16. I love to hike. I don't get out as much as I should because you know, video games.
Life.
But yeah, life. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. But so I was hiking this one time, and I like to think I'm an explorer, so I like to go off the beaten trail. And so I'll climb rocks and stuff like that. And keep in mind, this accent I'm about to say will never deter me from climbing rocks. I'm still going to climb rocks and go off the beaten trail just because I love it so much, even though I get hurt here. But anyways, so I was climbing on a really, like, free climbing up. We're talking about maybe 2 stories worth of, like, just earth. And the top of the rock was very mossy. And so I made it to the top and was gripping up to climb up, and I slipped right off. Fell, lost my balance, just get gone. See ya, bye. So I was falling down, and I was able to, because it was at a slight incline. So I was able to like dig my hands in and get my feet like down to like try to slow my descent as much as possible. But near the end, you just lose your balance. I fell backwards, and I actually got stabbed in the back by a pointy rock at the bottom to the point where I had to get stitches. And I still have the scar to prove it on my back left shoulder. And it was my shoulder, so I'm not freaking gonna die. But still, I was sitting there in pain. Well, for the first minute, I didn't feel anything. First minute, I was just like, "Holy crap, I'm alive!" But then I'm sitting there in pain with a freaking rock the size of like my fist in my shoulder, and I'm like, "Okay, hey, Dad, Mom, love you. Help." So
Yeah.
I guess, and then to bring it back, so that happened like that, blink of eye, like you said, just crazy how that happens. And so that's why I have so much sympathy for people with suicide and people that struggle with that. Every day is a fight. I just had a second of quick reflexes, and maybe if I went a little bit to the left, it would have stabbed my head. Maybe if I went a little bit to the right, I would have missed it. I don't know.
I think you mean not so quick reflexes, but that's okay.
Thank you. But so I don't know. So that was just shooting the crap. Maybe I got lucky, maybe I didn't. I don't know. But for someone to sit there and just be like, every day is a struggle. Not even every day, every hour. That's just almost mind-boggling to me, you know?
Yeah, I mean, for me, well, I'll even say we're recording this podcast like 2 weeks after I initially expected to record it. And the reason being for that was because, so for me, it's a pretty constant thing, but it definitely comes in like waves where it'll be a lot worse for an amount of time and then it'll kind of ease up for a little bit. And I don't know if it's just my brain being weird or if it's like the situations around me that are causing it. But like just for the past 2 weeks, I was in a really negative space, so I just kind of pushed everything off. And one thing that I will say is, it's yeah, the thoughts suck, obviously, but one thing that has helped me is like understanding that they suck, but not letting myself like beat myself up whenever I have to sit back and take a week or two to myself and just like take it easy. So that's something that's definitely like, so telling you, hey man, I'm going to reschedule this just because I'm not feeling it right now is way better than forcing myself to like struggle through an episode of the podcast and one, have it, because it wouldn't turn out as well as I would hope for it to. I wouldn't want to be doing it, which would attribute to it not turning out as well, but it's just, there are times where it's definitely better or worse. But it's always bad. But I don't know. One thing that I've learned also is like, it makes you feel different and act differently. But for me, the other thing is like not having people treat you any differently is something that makes you feel a lot better too.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, I don't know. It can be really debilitating sometimes. So like, it's not a physical ailment like having an accident and getting paralyzed or something. In the last guest episode that I had with Hesu Joe of BetterHelp, she even made a comment where she was like, whenever someone breaks an arm or something, they go to see a doctor immediately because that just, you have to. But whenever someone's like struggling with these intrusive thoughts and really in a negative space, people don't immediately assume, how do we fix this? It's more of how can, like, it's just something you have to deal with because it's mental and not visible.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Maybe that was a bit of a tangent, but it was just something that, it's just, I don't know. Life's a finicky creature, but like, it's also, if you allow yourself to enjoy it and really experience it and just see it for what it is, it can be equal parts you feeling infinitesimally small and just like this, speck of dust in this universe and why does it matter? But then at the same time, you mix that with those other thoughts of the chances of me being here are so slim that I should just be happy for that and grateful for the opportunity that I have, that it kind of balances out a lot of the time and just turns, at least for me, it turns me into like, yeah, I'm infinitesimally small, but at the same time, like, I'm gonna go have fun. I'm gonna go mini golf.
Yeah, gotta live it up a little bit. I mean, I guess how do I put it without sounding pretentious?
You can sound pretentious. It's okay. I'm a little pretentious too.
So I feel like, and I love, my major was in marketing research and analytics, so I guess I don't really have a lot of justification what I'm about to say, but I love studying history on the side. Anyone out there that wants to talk about history, that's so much fun for me, whether it's stuff from the basic that everyone knows, like World War II, all the way to the Crusades, to the Byzantine Empire. Like, so anyways, the point being that I'm trying to get is society is funny how it works. You were saying that, we're all just a speck of dust or whatever. I think it's almost a little bit different. So we are still a speck of dust, but I think like it's also the nature of man to want to believe that he or she is living in the end of times. If you look at it, people in every stage of history of civilization have acted like theirs would be the final days. Some have predicted a more traditional religious apocalypse, like Jehovah's Witness. Others anticipate a more scientific, but no less irrational scenario, like the people who were going through, oh crap, I'm so stupid. Y2K, or I'm so dumb. Russia, Cold War. Convinced, dude, they all thought they were going to be melted in a giant nuclear death bowl. Like, I mean, so often the living in the final days assumption extends to more than just doomsaying. Y2K, that was so funny that you brought that up.
I wanted to add it in. I love Y2K. I think it's
I think in truth, I think this derives from the very human fear, and this is a fear I had. This is what I went through like when I was 13, 14. The human fear of mortality. We fear the notion of ourselves ceasing to exist, and we don't like the thought of the rest of the world carrying on regardless after we're gone. On the
Yeah, without a
flip
doubt.
Yeah, but on the flip side though, it's much more comforting to flatter ourselves with the idea that we're important because we're as good as the human race is ever going to get, when in fact, and I love my friends, I love me, but when in fact we're kind of just like the awkward middle child. Um, I guess if that makes sense. But it's
Man, you
so
could you could say that about any age of people because, like, you look back a million years. I'm not great with timelines, but like,
sorry,
Neanderthals and
what?
stuff like that. Like, that's the beginning. If the future is only 1,000 more years in the future till we blow ourselves up doing some dumb shit, we made it pretty freaking far.
Yeah, we did all right. But it's crazy. So like what I said when it's like we fear the notion of ourselves ceasing to exist. I think for a lot of people that's true and they have that complex. But I guess this is a question more towards you because I've only experienced suicide very little in my life, only for like a couple months. I mean, do you fear yourself ceasing to exist? Because if you're like think about suicide a lot, then clearly you're just kind of like, not to be rude or inconsiderate, but you're just kind of like, screw it, whatever.
It really, it kind of like every thought goes through my head at the same time. So it's weird because I feel like most people have this inherent, maybe not even fear of death, because I feel like most people eventually get to a point where they accept that it's going to happen. And I feel like, myself included, I'm maybe not at the point of accepting that it's going to happen because no one wants to die.
Mm-hmm.
But so I can say that right now. But then in another particularly bad mindset, there are times where I feel that going through the hellscape that is my brain at that given moment is not worth seeing what else life has to offer.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it just depends on that. Like I said, there's like a roller coaster, an ebb and flow with it. And it just depends on what kind of mindset I'm in, because sometimes I feel like life is great. Like today was a really good day. I really enjoyed my day. Life is good. Go humanity. All that shit. But then there are other days where I really just feel like I'm a burden on myself. I'm a burden on the people around me. It doesn't matter if I die, whether there's religion or not, and what kind of the afterlife is, because I know at this exact second, I want the pain to be over.
Yeah.
That's how I feel.
Okay.
So
I get you.
to answer your question, it's a bit of both. And I expect that that's the case for a lot of people, just because there's always got to be that thing that keeps someone moving forward. For me, it's that optimism, and also I don't want to put people through the pain that, even though I feel like I'm a burden to my friends and family and girlfriend, I feel like a burden to them a lot of the time, and I feel like maybe sometimes they'd be better off without me.
Would you agree with me in saying that everyone has a breaking point?
That's a hard one to answer, because there could be, and myself, I would hope, is in this list of people, but I may have a breaking point, and I hope to never find out what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
I expect, even though I struggle with suicidal thoughts, I expect to I expect to have a natural death, hopefully a long and happy and healthy life.
I'll knock on some wood for you.
Yeah, thanks. But I don't know if there's a breaking point. I feel like hopefully it's something that nobody ever has to find out.
Yeah,
If that
I
makes
agree.
sense.
That's
Like, there are
terrifying.
people that have gone through a lot worse things than me that still push forward. And let me bring up a book that most people are familiar with, which is 1984.
Huh, throwback.
And I don't know how familiar you are with it, but basically there are spoilers, so sorry. But
I haven't read it, so.
he gets to the end.
You bitch!
The main character, the main character whose name I forget offhand, but the whole thing is like Big Brother's watching you. They want you to get rid of your humility, your independence, your personality, and all that.
Mhm.
Well, you get to the end, and what they do is they use your biggest fear against you. And for the main character, his fear is rats. And so they try to get him they torture him with rats, threatening to have them like eat through his face and eyes while he's alive. And to do that, the reason they're doing that is to try to get him to announce that the woman that he is in love with, he wants to say that he doesn't want to go through the pain anymore, and he wants to wish it on they want him to wish it on the woman that he loves. And they put him through this torture, and he does that because it's a mix of pain, fear, and everything else. And so he wishes this pain on his lover, I guess. Now, I like to think that I'd never do that. But my biggest fear is the ocean. But if you dropped me in the middle of the ocean, I have no idea how I will react. I hope I never have to find out. Like, it just because that's my biggest fear. I never want to have to encounter that.
Yeah.
So, but it's definitely something worth thinking about, but also something not worth testing.
Yeah, I mean, I feel that. My biggest fear. I am not some sort of badass. I'm just some white boy that likes to play video games.
And get stabbed by rocks.
And get stabbed by rocks. So nature 1, me 0. But my biggest fear is cancer. I don't really fear a lot of anything. I mean, there are things that are disturbing, like freaking giant spiders in Australia that can kill you in like a single bite. That's weird. But I wouldn't say I fear it. But cancer is something I fear, and it sucks because I'm staring still at this CDC page, and I'm looking at the number of deaths for leading causes of cancer, or leading causes of death, which number 2 is cancer. So that's something. I guess that's a little off topic, but yeah, I get that.
No,
like how would I act? I guess if I just went for my daily check and they're like, oh yeah, so you got stage 2 liver cancer. Because stage 2, you could still fight it, but it's like liver and stage 2, and it's like, how old am I? I don't know. There's a lot of factors that go into it, but
I know for me, I try to stay away from any disease as long as possible. I guess if I was afraid of a disease, it would be Alzheimer's, because I like my brain, even though it's an asshole sometimes. so like I like it, and I really don't want my memory and everything to go. But I really try to stray away from medical things, because as I've been getting older, again, I'm still young in the grand scheme of things. Like, I'm 23, but I stopped growing, and my body's kind of
God, dude, I can't believe we're 23.
It's nuts. But like, for me, and I'm sure you feel the same way too, there are going to be times where you just like randomly feel a pain somewhere in your body that just like comes, and you have no idea why. At least, like, it might be indigestion, it might be that you're gassy, it might be something just random, and you'll just have no idea. And I have that happen to me, and my first thought is, well, if this is cancer, I'm gonna find out.
So I do too.
I'm just sitting there, but I'm like, I'll find out way later, because I'm not going to get tested for this. Like, I'm just gonna pretend like it's nothing.
Yep.
And just step back.
Yep.
Like, I won't look at the numbers. I don't want to know. I know that like dealing with it is such a miserable process that I'm just gonna hope that I'm okay.
Just kidding. Everything's gonna be fine. So I know this is your podcast, but I just wanted to inform you that we are close to hitting the hour marker. So
yeah.
I guess to go off forward, do you have any final questions? Or
one last question related to Lexapro. And so you've been taking it for a while now.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious to know, you say that it's definitely helped your anxiety and symptoms and everything. Do you still struggle with it on a daily or a semi-regular basis, like your anxiety disorder? Or is it almost entirely contained?
Almost entirely contained. Again, I don't want to come off as cocky or whatever, but it is almost entirely contained. Almost. All it's going to take, though, is for, I don't know what. I will never know what. But it could be, there's always that niggling feeling in the back of your head where it's just going to take one thing just to make you go back into the moment again. I don't know what it is. And I think as long as I'm on Lexapro right now, we'll be all right.
Yeah. Well, and that's what you just said about breaking points. Like, no one has any idea what theirs is going to be.
Yeah.
But they're really fucking hoping they never find out.
I mean, I truly feel like I'm strong enough now to combat whatever is thrown. And I know that sounds like, oh, I'm invincible. But when it comes to anxiety, I feel like I can handle it because I've been around the block now. If you were to tell me this like at 17 when I started getting these attacks that it's going to get worse, because it did get worse. My life, like, It has nothing to do with anxiety. My life got really, really hard 18 and 19 trying to figure everything out and what I wanted to do, who I wanted to be. Like that moment of my life was the hardest in my life that I never ever want to do again, but was the best thing for me in the entire world.
Yeah.
And so to tell
Well, and I
us,
get that.
yeah,
That's like I like I just said, like my brain's an asshole, but I like it. It's definitely a grueling process sometimes, but ultimately you need to have or find something about yourself that you can appreciate and love and I mean, you even referred to it like not to be cocky or arrogant. I don't think it's cocky or arrogance. I think it's just that you need to have an appreciation for yourself in a way that if it does happen again, you can still look for the good parts after.
mm-hmm.
Like, I don't think arrogance or feeling that you're like a good person. Like, I think I'm pretty great. I think I've grown a lot as a person since
I would
like high
agree.
school, and I think that's been really good for me. And I don't think it's arrogant to say that because like I know I'm not perfect. I know that there's a lot of growth to happen. But I also think it is really important to understand that everybody has their merit, including yourself. I don't know. I don't know why the world is so weird. Is like because society at one end of the spectrum is saying like everybody needs to love themselves, love their body, and whatnot. But then the other side is like if you tell people or you actually feel that you love yourself and love your body, then you're a narcissist.
Yep.
But like there's got to be a happy middle where you just like yourself, but you're
Yeah.
not a dick about it.
Yeah. I don't want to marry myself, but like I'd hang out with myself. There's nothing wrong with a little alone time.
Yeah.
So.
With that, do you have any questions that you want to ask me? Anything come to mind?
So I guess the big thing is we talked about me, which I love. Thank you. That's great. But what about you? So I guess the one question I want to ask you is we kept talking about medicine for me. Did you ever take any medicine? Any
I
antidepressants? I know you talked about it a little bit, but
Yeah. Well, first off, in terms of the talking about you, I have 27 other episodes of this thing where it's all me. So I love talking to other people. I think it's a lot of fun. But personally, no, I have always been scared of antidepressants because, like I just said, I love my mind, even though it can be an ass. So I have always been a little bit scared that
you might lose yourself.
yeah, I'm scared to see what I'll become. It could be entirely positive. It could not do much, no matter which kind of prescription drugs that I were to try. But it also could, I don't know. It's weird because I do all these things. I like writing. I like doing this podcast. And one of my other biggest fears is complacency. And because I fear it, I don't think it'll ever happen. But the main reason that I do not want to try them is because I fear that I will become complacent, even if it makes me a little bit less suicidal at times.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think I'm willing to make that trade-off because I feel mentally healthy enough to fight through the suicidal thoughts. Now, I have nothing against antidepressants or antidepressants. I keep switching between anti and anti, and I sound weird, but I have nothing against them. They're just something that I personally have stayed away from. But I don't know. Life could change. I could be more open to them in the future. But I also feel like I've gone through enough of my brain and enough suicidal thoughts where I'm at a place where I'm more comfortable dealing with it.
Yeah, you figured yourself out.
Yeah, if I were to have taken antidepressants, I think I would have started around the same time that you started your Lexapro, which is probably back in, mid to late teens, like 15, 18, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
So, that, and again, that's just strictly my own thought process because I really like what I do, and I also know that, even like my sense of humor can be darker. And I think part of the reason that my sense of humor is dark comes from depression and sometimes seeing the world as a bit of a menace. And I feel like it allows me to see the tragedy in the world and try to find some humor in it, not because it's funny, but because it helps me cope with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I worry that if I took some antidepressant, I would see these tragedies and even my sense of humor and the way that I communicate with people would change, because I'd be seeing the world in a different light.
Yeah, I mean, so I use comedy as basically a shield. So
And I
feel
think
that.
that's really, I think as long as it's used well, I think that can be a really healthy way to cope with things. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'd much rather hear someone laugh about something unfortunate or find the humor in it and also use that humor as a way to push forward than have someone just harp on it and wait until it eats them up inside.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Agreed.
So, other than that, I don't have any other questions for you. I'm excited to have had someone on here where we talked about one Lexapro, some existential comments as well, and just I don't know, a generally good conversation.
Yeah,
I
I think
think
that's
I think
pretty
I
well.
think this was a lot of fun.
I agree. You ever want to talk about anything else, hit me up. But the one thing I want to talk to you before I go, and this is to whoever's listening out there, if you have anxiety or depression, I'm going to lean more towards anxiety because this is what I've dealt with, but depression, this goes right in the way too. You seek help. I know you hear this 1,000 times, and me saying it, of course, will probably not be any different. But as someone who finally did it, just get help. It's so good. Whether it's help from a professional, help from a friend, um, I would rather you go to a professional if I were to have a choice because they're meant to deal with that, not really your drinking buddy or whatever. But
Yeah,
if you're in college, go to your local guidance counselor. If you're in high school, do the same thing. I'm pretty sure Seneca had one. I'm pretty sure. I don't really know, to be honest with you. But
probably.
if you are in a workplace, there's at least for the workplace I have, there's people you can reach out to who will help you pay for a psychiatrist. Um, just go out. There are resources out there available. There are even hotlines online where you can talk to someone right now. Anxiety is nothing like depression or suicide, but it's still crippling to you as a person. So get help if you haven't figured out a way to do it, and just talk through it with someone. Because a lot of times, if you talk through it with someone, they probably see something you don't, and that might give you some insight. So I'd highly recommend doing that to anyone listening.
Yeah, and here's something I'll say: suicidal thoughts are terrible and everything, but that doesn't mean that any other sort of mental illness or things that people struggle with should be minimized in any capacity.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, anxiety sounds like just completely miserable.
Just fear, just a lot of fear.
Like I've never thrown up from it. I mean, I have anxiety, but I really do not know what kind of anxiety. It's just something that
Yeah,
I'm not sure about.
everyone has that.
Yeah, so it's just something that definitely seek help if you need it, and find someone you're comfortable talking to and someone that you're actually willing to open up with. Because if you're just going to sit down in a room with someone and like talk about non-meaningful things, that might be able to build a good rapport with that person, and then in the future you'll be able to have a good and positive conversation with them. But definitely just find someone that you're willing to talk to.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That's a good point.
And as an unpaid shout out to the guest that I had on 2 weeks ago, BetterHelp exists too. So if you're not comfortable with like going and talking to a therapist or your friends or family in person, you can always talk to someone anonymously using a resource such as BetterHelp.
Mm-hmm.
So there's all sorts of resources out there for everybody and anybody of every different type of personality and introversion and extroversion. So, but with that, we'll wrap it up. Danny, it was good to have you on. I'd be happy to have you back at some point in the future.
Scott, thank you for having me. This has been a fun time. Love getting into the nitty gritty seriousness once in a while. So
yeah, it was a good time.
But thanks for having me
everybody,
on. And
yeah, you're welcome.
Guess have a good night, everybody.
And everybody, follow me on Facebook and Instagram, and also. Well, I was about to shout out this podcast, but if you've made it this far, I don't think you need that shout out. So.
Thank you to whoever had the guts to stick with us for an hour and 8 minutes. You're the real trooper of the day. So,
so thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you again next week. Bye.